Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and as always it's my continuing mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Today, buckle up, knuckle down, and put the pedal to the metal because we're taking on Ubisoft's new open-world racing game, The Crew 2. Open-world racing games have been a thing for a while now. I mean, look at Crew 1, Test Drive Unlimited, Forza Horizon, and others. And I think there's an easy reason to explain why. And that reason, of course, is because there isn't a person out there who doesn't like to socially lube themselves up with a couple pints of Thornberry Lager and then Lindsay Lohan themselves halfway across America. And that's exactly what you do in these games. But the crowd working on The Crew decided to also add high horsepower, high flying airplanes and the inclusion of boats. It's like a kid's bathtub when you're 7. Let's see how it did, shall we? The Crew 2's out now for those who pre-ordered the special edition and out the 29th of June for everyone else. As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for The Crew 2. Finally, the Transformers we all deserve, city building via Lincoln Logs, and helo drops in boats. Graphics are up first. To be honest, when you sit down and spend a lot of time with this game, a lot of it is sort of a give and take. At times, The Crew 2 can look phenomenal, like when you're fighting off a passel of other racers across closed-off streets in downtown Seattle, and then Pacific Northwest sun hits you, which is another word for rain everywhere else, and it starts sheeting down, and you see the changes in the road, and some pretty good particle effects overall. I really do enjoy the weather system here, and in fact, The Crew 2 looks better the more muted it is. From snowy conditions to rain to desert hills, the game handles the environmental effects remarkably well, and does the same with the cars, which I think look good for what they are. Of course, because the game does have a customization system, you can take the best looking car and turn it into your Franken-turd when you start duct taping spoilers and drilling holes into the fenders. But seriously, they aren't that bad. I certainly don't think they're at Drive Club or Forza's levels, nor numbers for sure, but overall, I love the effects and I like the cars. Now, one special note is the water in the game, which is a significant upgrade from the original title, and taking a powerboat out into the ocean, showing off the attention to detail with the water and the wave physics. We don't really see that kind of stuff even in most water racing games. And it's easily those times when Crew 2 elevates above the original by a good margin, and that brings us to another part that I think the Crew 2 does remarkably well, and that is the absolute sense of speed. When it's at its fastest and running its best, I would put this graphics engine and just the sense of speed up against any other title. Some of these cars straight up book, and with the turbo system in place, you can race across the salt flats or bust up mountain roads at speeds faster than most of the airplanes in the game. They just absolutely got that sense of speed. Additionally, some of the improvements are insane as well, like quick switching between your vehicle types, and that means flying low over water and then transforming into a friggin' boat and continuing a race. Or racing at breakneck speeds across the water, everything glistening around you and just looking out into the sunset and then shooting off a friggin' berm and transforming into a car. All of it actually really seamlessly. It is beyond epic at those points, and it's the mixed events and at times with friends in mixed co-op play where Crew 2 absolutely puts the work in. That brings us to the bad. On a PC with all the settings on Ultra, I am stunned at the level of popping in the game. The level of detail system is completely borked. Even in some of the tighter races or downtowns, it's not at all surprising to see issues abound, like cars transforming into trucks into other cars or just fading away into oblivion, like my hope. And yes, this all happened with buildings as well, and this is with the consumer version of the game with all the patches. This is something Ubisoft themselves had actually discussed when they said planes in the game caused them to have to adjust the draw distance in this graphics engine. That's a little bit backwards in its planning. It's a little like yelling to everyone to burn the heretic and then selling the pitchforks afterwards. One doesn't work without the other. Also, destructibility has taken a great hit here when it comes to detail, and even at the most destroyed, the damage system seems to be almost in a stage-like progression, with fender bender progressing to never telling your parents you wrecked the car and moving to Italy kind of levels with just a couple steps. It really doesn't look all that good. Also, for an open world game, this doesn't have great readability on the open world destructibility. It's actually sort of piss poor, and this is something that was brought up in discussions from the very moment the game was actually shown in gameplay. It's horrendous and many times makes no real sense, with a small berm stopping you in one section, but full-on fences and some trees allowing you to thunderball your way through it like you're channeling a younger Burt Reynolds. It really needs improving, especially as the game hinges on the drive anywhere mentality. Luckily, some things have been fixed since the beta, like the ability of the water berms on freeways to not eat away your speed as if they're friggin' Pac-Man. When it comes to performance, here's the thing. There's no complaint I have. 4K at 60 FPS is absolutely doable with all settings on Ultra, but shadows, which actually needed to be turned down from context shadows, but I think that's expected. That can be done on a current i7 at 4.6 and a 1080 Ti. When you curve down from there with scale of power, you get a 1080 able to run 1440p on Ultra or 4K if you start really dropping those settings. The biggest FPS hits seem to be with the expected shadows and ambient occlusion, though both had robust settings. In fact, every setting goes at minimum from low to high, if not ultra. Now, while the consoles couldn't hit 60, except supposedly the Xbox X version is going to do so, all the other consoles hit 30 FPS, and they're pretty much locked at that. There's a couple bumps here and there, but overall, that's what you're going to get with those systems. As a package, the Crew 2 is really unique. There's no denying the majesty of flying down a road across the Florida Keys at redshift speeds. That's phenomenal. And like the Horizon series and, of course, the other Crew game, the game gets the atmosphere perfectly, from epic rolling dunes and deserts to snow-packed roads and dangerously tight road courses. And for the most part, many of the cars are excellent. But the low readability, already pointed out by many players of the beta, and the pop-in, even on a top-level PC, is ugly as hell, bringing that presentation down at least one notch. Speaking of presentation, that brings us to sound, music, and voice.
Gonna need to swap out the timing chain on your engine. But you know what? That's okay, because now we can afford to replace parts that are broken instead of having...
Let's do voice first. Sure, what happens in the Ubisoft studios where they can get high production values on so many different areas, and in fact a bevy of excellent voice actors normally in some of their larger titles, but goddamn, if they can't find the bottom of the barrel and then dig under it and find something under that when it comes to the production of the voice actor. Some of these are just terrible. If they aren't reading from a script directly into the mic like they're advertising some amazing Audible from Amazon, they're styling and profiling and rapping about them youngsters racing and how many followers you have to get on fake Twitter. At some point, they're going to get this right, but they don't in Crew 2. Music. With music stations, I have to say it's always nice. If you're not a fan of a genre of music, the Crew 2 handles this in the same way as a lot of other titles, with 5 or 6 stations ranging from ambient to classical, rap, and country, and a couple others. It can be turned off if you want it to. Overall, they aren't really the most robust selections in the stations, though, so if you like only 1 or 2 genres of music, this can be a little bit rough on your ears for extended playing. Overall, a pretty typical musical selection, but I would have liked to have really heard some big artists and some current tracks, but I'm sure licensing probably makes that crap horrible right now. Sound. So, with most of the engine sounds of the cars, I have to say I like them. They have a nice resonance, and I love how impacted everything is by the weather, with tonal shifts and tightening of that envelope when you're cruising across snow, and how everything opens up perfectly when you're on a lonely desert road that might not be as deserted as it originally looks. But I gotta say, I adore the boats. They sound like some mechanic high on a multitude of powders looked at an engine and thought, you know what, I bet I can make that better, then promptly forgot that he did so he upgrades it twice. These things sound like absolute thunder. I love them. However, there is a couple glaring omissions. The first is that whatever car you're in, when you're switching views in the car, the audio barely changes, and in the case of motorcycles, doesn't seem to at all, with maybe a slight shift of the audio moving closer or farther away in front of you, but none of that enclosed in a box with an engine and 4 wheels atmosphere that you get in true racers, and even more damning, it never feels like you're truly inside. It's really sad. Strangely enough, on the positive side, each car, motorbike, plane, and boat has a good deal of atmospheric effects you can hear in the cockpit, like the shaking of struts in a heavy turn on an airplane, or the rattle of a hood on a heavy engine beast. Well done, and in fact, that area actually is, I would say, better than a lot of other games in the genre. Luckily, when you jump into the audio settings, you do have that ability to adjust the layering. It does not in engine have anything for adjusting between stereo, surround, 5.1 and 7.1, but it does output as normal, so you can get those. All that being said, I would say some good, some bad. And of course, that brings us to gameplay and a bit about the story. And there really isn't a story here. You leap into the game, make an avatar, and then are thrust into the typical, atypical, no one knows you racer role. And of course, it's up to you to get big. To do that, you race around the game world, a truncated United States, blasting across large point-to-point tracks, through low-lap, ultra-fast sports car events, and even taken to the sky in aerobatics events, to the ocean, of course, with those powerboats I talked about. Now, as you play the game, you get money in the game as well as some experience and loot, which I'll come to in a second. When you've raced enough races, you can then face down a rival in that overall family of challenges. You beat them, and you can get the ultimate vehicle from them. You go from rookie, popular, famous, star, and icon. As you gain followers in the fake Twitter, you basically become those levels. Now, different car events are restricted to those levels. For example, street, rally, aerobatics, and powerboat are for rookie. Draft, motocross, jet sprint, and touring car for popular. Famous has drag racing, rally, cross, monster trucks, and air races. And star unlocks your last, which are hypercar and Grand Prix. Icon doesn't unlock new races, but it's a typical MMO style extra leveling kind of thing. It's almost like what your after 60 level does, where you can go from 1 to 9,999 levels of Icon. You also gain followers by performing tricks or doing crazy things, like wheelies or driving in the other side of the road. These kind of things don't get you as many followers, but it allows you to sort of break away. So let's say you're doing some racing and you see some loot drop in front of you. It looks a little bit like Destiny, and you basically drive over it and it unlocks different things for your car. Now, vehicles can get common, uncommon, rare, and epic items, with legendary items coming in September with that update. Each one has their bonuses to power control and so forth, and they can also have a special bonus stat like extra money and so forth for each one of the rare and above. That is one of the things about this game. There isn't necessarily tuning in the way you would think. You can't just go in and buy something better for your vehicle. You have to basically get it in the form of loot. And that's just one of the annoyances the Crew 2 has for me. There's a couple of them. First, the money for the cars makes absolutely no sense. And I know they've adjusted a little bit, but it still has inconsistencies everywhere. In fact, it's entirely possible to see a decked out rally raid car cost much less than a normal day-to-day driver on the high end. It's very odd. Second, for every car, there's of course 2 prices, and my God, are the in-game prices insane. Insane. Adjusting the difficulty of the races allows you to get a little bit more money, but in the end, it still just feels really off. But guess what? Right next to it is, of course, your Ubisoft bucks. And I think when it comes to this game, this is going to be a debate that's going to rage for a long time, because personally, the prices of the vehicles when it comes to in-game money seem stunningly odd and just off, and in many times more expensive than it should be. If it's a drift car, it's one forever as well. You can't take a drift car and then transform it into the normal racing version. You have to buy one of each. They'll have a little icon to tell you what that is. This seems really patented for getting people to think, you know what, I'm just going to buy that extra one. And yes, it's absolutely true. Some of those have a little bit better performance than others, so you got to keep an eye out for that. Then there's the AI. So rubber banding, it's for sure a thing in the game. Yes, only in some races, and much of that can be alleviated with upgrades, but it is noticeable. I was able to absolutely destroy the competition in the normal races on normal or on hard. But the moment I got into the interdisciplinary events, going slow seemed to slow everybody down. Going fast, they still absolutely stuck to me, and that's a little bit frustrating. And of course, that leaves us with the saving grace, which is going to be multiplayer. It could be. But unfortunately, PvP hasn't been added to the game and won't come out for months, leaving you with co-op multiplayer only. And that's easy enough to invite people into a race and go around with your group. I love that. But come on, by no means should this be the way the multiplayer works right now. PvP should be in there day one. This is a game that's going to be built around that. And if you want to join up with others, that's great. You absolutely can. But the fact is that if you want to do that with your group, you're going to have to verify the time they're on and so forth. The only way to really contest against other people is to just look at the leaderboards, which I have to admit sort of lands with a thud. So that leaves us with a game that is very unique. A single-player game that's got a couple issues, and a multiplayer game that's only got really half its features. And then when you look at the single-player game and you start driving around, it really does feel absolutely empty. Far more empty than any of the other titles that I've mentioned before. It's a perfect example of the common misrepresentation in open-world games that touting some giant number of the square miles your world in means absolutely nothing if there's very little reason to explore it. Miles can go by without really seeing a single NPC car, and while cities are really populated, that drops off incredibly fast the moment you leave them, or at least in some areas. But that's not even really what empty means. It just means there isn't a lot to really do. There isn't a lot of the different elements that we've seen in a Forza Horizon, which has elevated this to a level that makes it really feel active and alive. We don't see that in the Crew 2. Also, I love flying around and jetting around in the boats. Those are both absolutely excellent. Their events, though, cannot hold a candle to the car events. Races and boats are pedestrian at best and don't do anything to really offer obstacles or overall challenge that, let's say, a car would have. And this is even though Ubisoft put a skill-based mechanism in the game that has you hitting a button or holding back on the gamepad to gain a bit of extra speed in those. The plane also has that same kind of overall gimmick. But its events are worse for the plane, and much of them are literally fly straight up, fly straight down, do a turn. The race element here isn't presented, and you're left with something incredibly bare bones. Now that being said, any of the races involving all three can be a blast. Admittedly, in the end, not much really happens in those planes though, but overall I still really like those events. Now, when it comes to racing games, control's a big deal. Here in the Crew 2, you can play with mouse and keyboard, gamepad, steering wheel, and on the consoles, of course, the latter too. And they do work well with some adjustments, but there's been some issues in the beta, especially with some particular steering wheels, so keep aware of that. When it comes to handling, everybody likes something slightly different. With the Crew 2, I can just say that the basic settings, the car felt different from one another, and with the advanced settings you're able to do, I could dial them in the way I wanted. There's a flexibility there for most people, but I think some people it's just not going to wow them. As a package, though, I think that the Crew 2 suffers from a massive identity problem, and maybe that's because of its release time. The first is that multiplayer isn't really there. Sure, you can compete on the leaderboards, but that's not the same thing as seeing your hard-earned work pay off in a race. And sure, you can drive around exploring the world with your friends, and that's great, but other than your small house, there isn't really a lot of depth to, say, equal Test Drive Unlimited or anything like that game offered. And then there's a single player, which takes less than 25 hours to beat the matches, really does seem set for microtransactions in the same way that I've hated in some of the previous games, but it also restricts the car types, as I said before. It turns random loot, which just is a little bit bothersome, and overall doesn't feel all that rewarding over a long period of time. For me, it feels like the Crew 2 aimed for something that wasn't quite a racing sim and wasn't quite a true arcade game. It's a combination that's right in the middle, and for some I can see that being the middle ground that kills their enjoyment here. Fun factor. Yeah, it can be fun. Racing through the desert is a highlight, and the various weathers are all done well, and exploring the game is fun with friends. Make no mistake, that sense of exploration is here, and it's in spades. But overall, at this time, it feels like a very real games as a service beginning to another title. Some of us don't want to see that. Everything is so disjointed. The little ways the loading works, the empty locations, the restrictions, the high cost of the items, the strange lack of real cohesion in the boat and airplane sections. They feel really tacked on. We can all make fun in a game. That's a given. But to me, what the Crew 2 offers isn't really incredibly robust in anything other than space, and its lack of PvP, the overall just lack of things to do or interact with, speaks strongly of their already mentioned plans to open things up for players to make their own stories, and I applaud that. But it feels like this game is another wrong end in that equation, and once again another title that we're going to have to wait to see patched before it truly comes even close to what we expect. And I know right now some people are just absolutely freaking out. I get it, the Crew 1 didn't have the best launch. Scratch that, it's like indicating the Space Shuttle Challenger had a chance of gliding home afterwards. That was an abomination, but after those later patches and huge expansion, it came into its own. But do we really want that for every single game? I mean, the game is based on being an open world multiplayer game without the major multiplayer component included until months after release. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system, with rent replaced by deep sale on PC. I would say this, if you're a single player fan, this might have something for you. If not, this is a deep sale or rent, depending on which system you have. What is there can be fun, but it hinges greatly on a number of other factors that in the end, I'm not quite sure the gamers themselves are going to be able to control. It's a lot like Crew 1, where it feels like in a while, there's something that can be built on this skeleton, but so far, it doesn't seem to have a lot of meat to it. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Reddit or Twitter, or of course, become a patron on the Patreon website, where you can help me do reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Peace out, and enjoy the rest of your week.